Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something critical. Privileged Access Management, or PAM.
That's right.
Now, you probably know PAM is foundational for security, but, well, getting the implementation right, that's another story. It can turn into a real headache, even a disaster.
It really can.
We've got this key document, 10 signs your PAM solution implementation is headed for a disaster. Our mission today is basically to give you a strategic shortcut through it.
Mm-hmm.
We want to pull out the most vital insights, help you understand these pitfalls, why they happen, and crucially, how you can fix them before it's too late.
Yeah.
Think of this as your guide to dodging those security gaps, the operational chaos, even that user resistance we sometimes see, moving from failure to success.
And the stakes here are just incredibly high. A solid PAM solution, it's the bedrock for securing your most sensitive accounts, your critical data. But like this document makes so clear, even the best tech, the best intentions, they can get completely undermined if the execution is flawed. It's not just software deployment.
Right.
It's a big strategic shift. And if you don't handle it carefully, you could actually end up more vulnerable.
Okay, let's dive right into that first warning sign the source flags up. No clear business objectives.
Yeah.
It sounds almost too obvious, doesn't it?
It does.
But how often do we see organizations jump into something complex like PAM without really, nailing down the why beyond just we need security?
Yeah, and what's often missed, I think, is how foundational this really is.
Yeah.
Without clear goals, the whole thing can just unravel. If you're implementing PAM without defining, say, specific compliance needs, or maybe you want to reduce insider threats or boost operational efficiency, without those clear aims, you get scope creep.
Right, scope creep.
You lose direction. And at the end of the day, you'll struggle to prove any real ROI on what's usually a pretty significant investment.
So how do you fix that?
Well, you've got to articulate those core business drivers first.
Right.
Establish measurable KPIs right from the start. Things like a quantifiable drop in standing privileges.
Okay.
Or tracking the number of privileged accounts you discovered that weren't managed before. And crucially, make sure PAM lines up with your bigger security and business plans. It's not just about ticking a box. It's ensuring that PAM spend delivers real, tangible security and operational wins. That makes justifying the budget, the resources, much easier because you have clear metrics showing the value to your organization.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, without those metrics, how do you even know if it's working? Which brings us neatly to sign number 2. Lack of executive and stakeholder buy-in. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? Because it's about people, maybe politics, not just the tech.
Absolutely.
How do you get everyone on the same page?
Well, connecting this to the bigger picture, buy-in isn't just, getting a signature on a form. It's really about building a shared understanding. Everyone needs to grasp the risk, the urgency, and how this PAM solution actually helped across the whole organization. The source is clear. If leadership and key teams like IT, security, compliance, if they aren't genuinely on board, PAM adoption just stalls.
Stalls completely.
Yeah. You'll hit resistance, maybe budget cuts, integration efforts won't happen properly. So the best approach, actively educate your execs on the risks, the real risks of core PAM.
Okay.
Get all the stakeholders involved early, CISO, CIO, IT teams, auditors. Get them in a room, align expectations. And this is key, show some quick wins.
Like what?
Maybe vaulting 50 critical admin accounts really fast, show that immediate risk reduction. That kind of engagement helps secure funding, get support, smooths out the bumps during implementation, and really speeds up adoption.
So show, don't just tell, bring people along. Okay, sign number 3, no dedicated PAM team or expertise. We see this, right? Companies buy fancy tech, then just hand it off to whoever has bandwidth. What's the problem there? And, why is having that internal expertise so vital?
Well, it really raises a key question for your long-term success with PAM.
Yeah.
How much are you investing in building internal ownership and skills versus just relying on, say, vendors?
Right.
The core issue is when PAM duties fall to staff who aren't trained for it, or when you lean too heavily on vendor support without building up your own internal know-how.
And that leads to?
Almost always it leads to misconfigurations.
Yeah.
And those misconfigs can become serious security holes.
Ouch.
The fix is pretty clear. You absolutely need a dedicated PAM team, or at least identify and really empower some internal champions who own the solution. Invest properly in PAM-specific training, maybe certifications, for these key people. Now, working with a good vendor or consultant for best practices, that's valuable, sure, but it should supplement your internal capability, not replace it. Getting that right directly lowers the risk of those breach-causing misconfigurations and makes your PAM setup way more efficient and effective over time.
Makes sense. Build that internal muscle. All right, sign 4 feels like a classic struggle. Ignoring user experience, UX, and business workflows. Security versus usability. How do we balance that?
You know, it's fascinating because user resistance can be just as damaging, really, as a technical flaw.
Huh. Yeah, I can see that.
For you, making the user experience smooth isn't just a nice to have. It can seriously boost compliance. The problem starts when your privileged users feel like PAM is just slowing them down, getting in the way of critical tasks.
And then they find workarounds.
Exactly. They inevitably find ways around it, and boom, your security effectiveness plummets.
So what's a proactive approach?
Conduct a proper UX assessment with your actual end users before you roll it out fully. Look for ways to automate approvals, implement just-in-time, or JIT access.
JIT, right.
Yeah, that drastically cuts down friction. Give privileges only when needed for how long they're needed, then take them away automatically. And lean towards risk-based policies, too. Adapt to what users need without just throwing up heavy-handed restrictions everywhere.
Okay.
This way, you boost user adoption, people actually follow the PAM policies, and your security controls don't end up disrupting essential business operations.
That's a really crucial balance to strike. Okay, number 5. Not integrating with existing security and IT systems. I like your analogy earlier. PAM isn't a fortress, it's part of the city's defenses. How do we connect it all up?
Right, and if we look at the bigger picture, again, isolated security tools just create dangerous blind spots. It's that simple. For your setup, getting that integration right transforms individual pieces into a cohesive, smarter defense. The source really hammers this home. PAM has to work with your IAM, your SIAM, your ITSM systems, even your DevOps tools.
All of them.
Yeah. Poor integration. That leads to silos, wasted effort, and big security gaps. The fix is, well, meticulous. You need to identify every key system that PAM needs to talk to.
Okay.
Prioritize using APIs, pre-built connectors, aim for genuinely seamless interoperability. And, this is important, test those integrations regularly. Don't just set it and forget it.
Right. Ongoing checks.
Exactly.
Right.
The payoff is huge, though. It strengthens your whole security posture because PAM becomes part of this wider intelligence system. It cuts down operational drag and seriously improves your incident response because you have richer, connected data.
Okay, let's unpack this next one. Sign 6. Underestimating non-human identities. This feels like a big shift. It's not just about people anymore, is it?
Not at all. And this raises a critical question. Are you maybe ignoring a huge chunk of your attack surface by only focusing on human users? Because the reality is, these non-human identities, service accounts, bots, application IDs, machine accounts, they're increasingly prime targets for attacks.
Right, because they often have high privileges.
Precisely. And the problem is, if your PAM strategy only covers humans, you're leaving these automated, often highly privileged pathways wide open.
So what's the remediation?
You need a really thorough discovery process first. Inventory, all those non-human identities everywhere. Then implement strong controls. Credential rotation, least privilege principles, continuous monitoring specifically for these accounts.
Okay.
And for modern setups, like DevOps, enforcing automated secrets management in your pipelines is absolutely vital.
And the business value.
It's a massive reduction in risk for credential-based attacks targeting those non-human accounts. Plus, it keeps you compliant with regulations that increasingly demand protection for all privileged credentials, human or not.
That's a huge area, especially with automation everywhere.
Yep.
Okay, sign 7. Lack of privilege, discovery, and continuous monitoring. The old can't protect what you don't know problem. But how do you keep eyes on everything when things are constantly changing?
Well, what's really key here is that word continuous. It's not a one-off check. It's about ongoing vigilance. That's what empowers you to spot threats proactively and adapt as privileges shift and change. The problem is simple. Without that initial thorough assessment and then the ongoing monitoring, your risks are unknown, unmanaged.
Privilege creep.
Exactly. Privileges sprawl, they get forgotten, they become excessive. So the solution, regularly run discovery scans. Find those hidden or overprivileged accounts. Then implement continuous monitoring and alerting for privileged sessions. Watch what's happening.
Real-time visibility.
Yes. And consistently review your access logs. Look for weird patterns, policy violations. That whole package gives you full dynamic visibility into your privilege risks and lets you detect and respond to threats much faster.
That real-time aspect is crucial. Okay, sign 8. Weak enforcement and over-reliance on vaulting. This one's interesting. A vault is good, but it's not enough, is it? What about when someone actually uses the credential?
Yeah, exactly. If we connect this back, true security isn't just locking credentials away. It's about enforcing that fundamental principle of least privilege.
Least privilege, right?
And eliminating standing access wherever you possibly can. That's what really shrinks the attack surface for your critical systems. The problem, the source points out, is just vaulting credentials.
Yeah.
Well, it's not enough if you're not also enforcing things like just-in-time access,
JIT again.
least privilege, and comprehensive session monitoring. Those accounts are still exposed when they're actually being used.
So the fix is more active controls.
Definitely. Implement JIT to get rid of standing privileges. Access only granted for the task, for the time needed. Require multi-factor authentication, MFA, for all privileged access, no excuses. And enforce session recording, maybe even analytics, for high-risk stuff. Get that audit trail. This stronger approach drastically cuts your attack surface by minimizing how long privileges exist, and it seriously boosts your forensics for compliance and incident response.
That's a big shift from just static protection. Okay, number 9, failure to plan for scalability. It's so easy to focus on today, right? But what about tomorrow, next year, as things inevitably grow?
And this brings up a really practical question. Is your PAM solution actually built to cope with how dynamic modern IT is? Or is it going to become a bottleneck pretty fast?
Yeah, good question.
The problem is, a PAM solution that wasn't designed with scale in mind, especially thinking about cloud, hybrid setups, DevOps, it's going to get outdated fast,
Leading to
expensive fixes, downtime, and worst of all, new security gaps popping up. So to get ahead of this, you need to choose a PAM solution that specifically states it supports hybrid and multi-cloud right from the start.
plan for growth.
Exactly. Design the architecture with future growth baked in. Make it scalable, flexible, and get into the habit of regularly reviewing and tweaking your PAM policies as your business and your tech stack evolve. That foresight means your PAM keeps protecting things effectively as you grow, and you avoid costly rip-and-replace projects later.
Makes sense. Future-proofing. And finally, sign number 10, no incident response or break glass strategy.
Wow, yeah. The absolute worst time to figure out emergency access is during an emergency. Isn't it just? And what's fascinating, I think, is that even the best security system, especially something as central as PAM, needs a well-defined and, importantly, tested emergency plan.
Tested, right. Not just on paper.
Absolutely. For you, knowing exactly how to get critical access back securely during a crisis, that can literally be the difference between quick recovery and just prolonged disaster.
So what's the risk if you don't have this?
The source is pretty blunt. If you haven't planned and tested how to recover access safely during an outage and attack, whatever emergency your PAM system could become this massive operational blocker right when you need access most.
A nightmare scenario.
Total nightmare. So the remediation, establish clear break glass procedures for that emergency, high privilege access, and test them rigorously. Look into automating emergency access with JIT provisioning so it's fast but still secure under pressure. And crucially, run regular incident response drills that specifically involve testing your PAM solution and these emergency break glass steps. Doing that ensures you can restore critical access quickly and safely, cutting downtime and reducing business impact when things go wrong.
Wow. Okay, we've just walked through these 10 signs. Your PAM solution implementation is headed for a disaster. And what seems really clear is that avoiding these disasters, it's not magic, is it?
Not at all.
It's achievable with careful planning, good execution, and just ongoing attention. It's not about being scared by the complexity. It's about being informed and proactive.
Exactly right. And these signs, they aren't just, technical items on a checklist. They're really indicators of an organization's strategic thinking, its overall cybersecurity health. Viewing PAM implementation not as a one-off project, but as this ongoing, evolving commitment to being resilient and mature in your security. That's really the key to making it work long-term.
So as you're thinking about everything we've covered today, maybe reflect on this, how these 10 warning signs aren't really just individual problems. They're more like interwoven threads, right? It's part of the whole fabric of your organization's cybersecurity maturity and how well it operates. What do these signs tell you about where your organization's biggest vulnerabilities might actually be lurking, maybe beyond just the tech itself, perhaps in the processes, the culture, or that strategic alignment we talked about?